What's the worst marriage story in your family? My second cousin cheated on her husband. We kicked her out of the family and kept him. A couple of years ago, my uncle, whom is about 50 years old and a divorcee, decided he didn't want to be single anymore. So he signed up to a blind wedding TV program, and he got chosen. So a couple of months go by and the wedding takes place. The bride was very friendly and nice and her family were pretty cool as well. They both said yes. But soon later, in the car ride that would take them to the after party, they got into a huge argument and realized they weren't meant for each other. That night they slept in different rooms, and so the next morning they got divorced. A marriage that lasted literally 12 hours. My parents decided to save money on their divorce and went with a Puerto Rican divorce by mail. We did not and have never lived in Puerto Rico. It turns out it was a scam and their divorce was never actually legal. They didn't figure this out for over 30 years. My mom even remarried, making her a bigamist. They are still married to this day, but only on paper. My grandmother's cousin was married to a man who cheated on her and moved to town to live with his mistress, so his wife started divorce proceedings. He was so offended by this that he shot her and her mother on the steps of the town church in front of 4 of their 8 children. What a shitbag. One of my brothers had a shitstorm, shitshow, of a marriage, starting with the wedding thing was shotgunned. Happened within 3 to 4 months of them meeting. We thought it was because it was the first girl who ever looked at his dick. But announced they were pregnant right before the ceremony, stealing their own thunder. Had it outdoors at this strange country club place. I don't know how to describe what it was, but they did not seem to understand how to do a wedding. It was windy. They had the ceremony outside. Chairs and other things blew away. They invited around 100 people. They had around half the people not bother to show up after us sping. The dessert or desserts, besides the wedding cake, never showed up, which worked out I guess with the number of people who were missing. He asked me to give a speech, like just called me up to say a few words without any warning, after telling me my daughter wasn't allowed at the wedding because it was no children, which I might have understood had they not allowed the maid of honor and the bride's sister to each bring their children as exceptions, one a newborn, one a few months older than my daughter. Turned out I wasn't the only one asked to give a speech without being warned. My other brother gave an epic speech. He just said, "I'm a cop, and if your relationship was a car on the highway, I'd give you a speeding ticket and say slow down cause you're going too fucking fast." And then he sat back down. He walked out within a few months of the baby being born because he couldn't take it. Moved in with a friend. Turned out friend had a baby 3 months later, which I believe, if I have the timing right, means he got girl_a pregnant, got engaged to girl_a, got girl_b pregnant, then married girl_a, has baby_a, then moved out to be with girl_b, then had baby_b and thought no one would notice the kids were like a month apart in age. The was divorced from girl_a within a year. He pays alimony and child support to girl_a and double child support to girl_b, but neither will talk to him anymore at all. Whole thing makes me so upset and sad and angry. My sister dated this guy for 7 years before they finally got married. We knew he was a bit of a bum, seeing as he got his degree and proceeded to accept absolutely no jobs. None. So they get married, and he starts to get a bit sketchy. At some point, we find out that he's basically constantly smoking weed, so that was a pretty big red flag. Then my sister reveals that he is slowly becoming more and more controlling, yelling at her every time she doesn't do exactly what he wants, saying you said in your vows that you would obey me, she didn't. Throughout all of this, she is single-handedly supporting both of them, with him just sitting on his fat ass at home. Another line he crossed was having the audacity to want to buy a PS4 with her money, then losing his freaking mind when she said no. The final line was crossed when we found out he was physically abusive, putting her in a chokehold on multiple occasions. Thankfully, my older sister is about as docile as a mother bear that's lost its cubs, so she didn't waste any time, just straight up filed for divorce immediately. We currently have no idea where he is. My uncle married this woman. They got divorced. Then they got remarried on Christmas Day, so it would always be special. She left him again, and now he hates Christmas. My uncle married a woman who seemed crazy about him. According to my mother, she was all over him while they were dating. I'm talking PDA, back rubs, nicknames. She was keeping herself for marriage, so they got married. Once they married, it was like a switch was flicked and she turned cold. She also turned into a complete whack job. The woman would get into people's cars when they stopped at a traffic light and demand to be driven to wherever she wanted. She was cracked. My uncle said she was only interested in her when she wanted to get pregnant. She got what she wanted, children, and they eventually got a divorce. It messed my uncle up a bit, but it left the family with some great stories. My Bill and his wife, Sil, also, the day the last of their 3 kids moved out. She moved out also. 27 years of marriage. She just stayed for the kids. He had no clue. My brother is finally divorced. Cupcake, it was derogatory. Moved out 5 times before he finally said that is enough. Once she claimed to have fallen in love with some guy on the internet. She would move out and furnish an apartment on credit cards, then go back and get him to pay off the cards. She got a car and a card in his name using his SSN. The last time she moved out, she got pregnant to Tom, and my brother used that to get the divorce. Halfway through she insisted it was his, and he laughed because it's not possible without having had sex. She still tries to demand he do things as if they are still married. This girl, my brother, was after, had a friend who was crazy and wanted to date me. As a wingman I went along, told her we aren't dating and just friends, and barely at that. She ended up stalking me and listed me as her husband on her insurance. They called me one night looking to garnish my wages to the tune of $8,000. I called her up screaming at her. She swears she didn't do that and she doesn't know how that happened. Thankfully the rep that called back believed me and let me off the hook. Cousin's 19 and in college, gets a girl pregnant. Everyone is told it was a one-night stand and they didn't know each other and it happened at a party. Not even a month later I start hearing that they are going to get married. I'm like, yup, this sounds like a marriage that'll last forever. He was partying a lot, struggling with addiction to pain pills and just generally living a person's lifestyle that you would not think is conducive to marriage. The wedding was probably the most depressing thing at a church I've ever witnessed. He looked miserable the whole time, like couldn't even fake a smile miserable. The drive home, my parents, who agreed marrying the girl was the right thing, even acknowledged it looked like he'd been forced to marry her. You'll know how this shit ends. 2 years I think they tried to make it work. After divorce, court custody battles and a stint in rehab, he's doing great and remarried. His original baby mama is also doing awesome and their kid is cute as hell. The whole thing was just so stupid. Biggest waste of time and money I've ever seen. Literally everyone knew this would be a disaster and it was. But because we were in the effing Bible Belt, these 2 kids were forced to marry each other and then go through a divorce to make their families feel better about it. Fuck me, I hate that religious bullshit. My grandfather married a blackjack dealer from Vegas a year before he died and willed everything to her. My mom and my dad divorced when I was in middle school and my mom started dating this guy who lived in our neighborhood growing up. I knew him and his kids really well. They were some of my best friends, so it was pretty awesome for a bit. I never learned the exact details, but something happened and his kids basically all stopped talking to him. They still haven't fully reconciled. Anyway, they get engaged and I'm so excited. They say it's going to be a small ceremony, but I'm still stoked until they tell my brothers and I we can't go because it isn't fair that we could go, but his kids couldn't. They got married on a Wednesday during school hours. I took a math test as they read their vows. They regret it now, they say, but I'll never be not salty over that. Oh boy, do I have a story for this. My uncle, dad's brother, works as a traveling salesman. He spent a lot of time in the capital, like 6 hours drive away from where he was raised. Met a woman there who he eventually married and moved into a house in the capital with. It's only recently that I realized that woman wanted to be a trophy wife. Only problem is she was in no way capable of taking care of a household. She couldn't cook, cleaned the bare minimum, and complained about everything. He also hated all of my uncle's relatives because our family didn't speak the same language as hers. She probably wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but realized my uncle didn't have the salary for that, so she had to work, and you could feel the resentment she felt for my uncle. Nowadays they're divorced. He doesn't get the daughters for holidays because she's spiteful, so for Christmas he has to wait 2 days after Christmas Eve before it's his turn with the daughters. Every Christmas, she lives with her mom, who does everything for her and explains why she was so spoiled and entitled. Once, the youngest of his 2 daughters ran away, and he knew nothing about it until he met them the next time, 2 weeks later. God, I hate that woman. I wish he could have primary care of them, but it doesn't work well with his job. My grandmother remarried to a guy with some issues. I knew he was weird when he gifted me a $2 bill for my birthday, but then he started doing some sorta inexcusable things, fell for scams, used grandma's credit card to donate to churches, generally doing the things that make people go, how the hell do you function? The whole time, his family, kids and such, were being shitheads to my grandma. The short version is that she was allowed zero authority for his well-being, but was expected to do all the work in taking care of him like a live-in nurse. They lasted maybe a year before divorcing. Apparently my father and his brothers, grandma's kids, that is, pretty much saw it coming a mile away, although none of us knew that the guy's family would be such a pain in our collective ass. My cousin got married. We met his kid and now stepkids. It was a good excuse to see each other again, and we had a nice time. A few months later, their relationship starts to get a bit rocky. Start fighting. At the same time my cousin is getting sicker and sicker of being a parent. One day he just leaves. He had gotten back into drugs, so he probably just wanted to get away and do some drugs without his wife throwing them out or anything. Or maybe not. Either way he never came back. It's been about 3 years now. No none from him, except a few months later, and he needed a place to work and stay. Family member took him in, and he left again about a month later. No word from him since then. No news reports matching him, or a body or anything, so he either died homeless, or ghosted and changed his name. This sounds made up, but one of my great aunts was effectively common law married. I don't think they ever tied the knot on paper, to a guy that was ultra redneck, ultra conservative, rubbed everyone the wrong way at family gatherings. A few years into their relationship he got busted and went to jail. Turns out he was the leader of an illegal cockfighting ring. She had no idea, she just thought he was going to the casino to gamble on weekend nights, or so she claims.